All right. Week 10 in the books. Week 11. What a way to start. Week 11 in the books. So we're more than halfway through with the season now. We're on to week 12. We've now all played every other team once. So it's kind of a good week to get a little bit of analysis in, see where we are. It's totally even Stevens. No one has had a matchup advantage yet. Our double slash triple matchups come into play kind of moving forward. But as of this point in time, every one of us has played everybody else. So kind of fun to compare and see where we are. Go over our results first. I was beating Nate all week until Saturday, Sunday. He beat me 9-6-1. Frank beat Corey 9-6-1, another big matchup. Dubsy Dimes keeps rolling. That's I think 4 wins in a row over Maffey, who has been consistently 4 and 5 in the power rankings. Big win for JW. French Toast 8-6-2 victory over Casey, who continues to kind of scuttle a little bit. Alex and Jeremiah tie. Jeremiah's 3rd tie in the last 5 weeks. I don't know what is happening. Mixed in with 2 losses. And Brad beats Bo handedly 11-5, our biggest win of the week. Let's look at some of the numbers. Sorry, I didn't have that filtered to the right spot. So here's some of our Fantrax standings. I like to show this just because I can go over win streaks, but I realize it isn't quite as easy to use as the other window. We'll just do it anyways. Nate is number 1. Frank is number 2. Nate has not lost in 8 weeks, which means 3 more weeks without a loss, and he'll have run the gauntlet, going through all 11 teams without a loss. It's so weird, but it has happened once exactly in all 7 seasons of our league's history. I don't know how that's possible, but exactly once in all 7 seasons, a team has run the gauntlet and not lost to anybody. Now, Nate has tied twice, so maybe you could put an asterisk next to that. I don't know. But to go against every other team and not lose is a tremendous accomplishment. So standing in his way, he's got 3 tough opponents. I'll get into it more. I think that's part of his weekly recap. Frank just behind him's won 3 in a row now. I have lost 2 in a row to Nate and Frank. Alex right behind me's won 3 in a row. JW's now won 3 in a row. Maffey has lost 3 in a row. Casey lost 1. French won 1. Brad rattled off 3 wins in a row. I guess I didn't even know that after putting this in. Bo's lost 4. Corey has lost 3. Just tremendous bad luck for Corey. And Jeremiah has lost 5. But as I mentioned, he's tied 3 of those. It's just that he hasn't won in 5 weeks. That's better. More accurate way to say that. Here's a look at our VTL. I am on top still, but clinging to a narrow lead after Nate thoroughly outdid me this week in terms of VTL. Frank is creeping in right behind him. 3 of us have a very big gap over Corey, Alex, and Maffey, who are grouped together very closely. It's that order: Corey, Alex, then Maffey. And then we get into our bottom group where everyone feels like they're just neck and neck. Technically, the order is French, JW, Casey, Bo, Brad, and Jeremiah. Just got to say one thing too, like this 53% for batting for Jeremiah is just crazy. It was like 70 for so long. The pitching's actually come around, but the batting has gone down. Here's a look at our luck. Corey's luck's at an all-time worst. He's facing 66% offensive batting VTL. You would just think, again, this has got to be impossible at this point in the season, but nope. Alex has had a cakewalk on offense, but quite a tough road on pitching, so that's just very odd. His strength is pitching as well, so it's just odd. Not a whole lot of significant stuff here. You can see almost everyone's color is yellow because we all normalize over time. Let's look at some of the specific things that happened this week. Percentile outcomes. Really, we should just focus over here on the right, or excuse me, the left. Frank and Nate both put up 80th percentile outcomes or better. Frank did so on the back of really strong batting and bad pitching. Bad, I mean, not good pitching. Nate, quite good at batting. but very good at pitching. So, I mean, that's just tough. Jeremiah actually had a really good pitching week, but a really bad batting week. It's just been so wild to see every week there's something that lets Jeremiah down. Never is there a week where they both work in concert together. Corey with a really strong week batting, but really weak pitching. I was kind of solid in both. JW very solid in both. So yeah, I think we did see I was had the 13th most walks of all time this week, 99th percentile outcome, 49 walks. Pretty crazy. Other than that, I don't. Okay, never mind. We had the second best K per plate appearance of all time. Did not realize that happened. Frank, what was it? A 14.9% strikeout rate for a week? That's just insane. Um, Home runs allowed are just kind of, the numbers look really flashy because we haven't had that many results yet. Same thing kind of with quality appearances. Two teams got to 8. That's pretty exceptional. Those teams are French and Bo. Let's look at the power rankings piece. Here are the rankings. I have completed a write-up for each team this week, so I'm going to go over the write-ups here in a minute. I've added in 2 fields here that I think will add a lot of context and maybe honestly made it a little easier for me to do power rankings. We've added in what's the record over the last 5 weeks versus the league, and then what does that equate to? That's not versus the league. I'm sorry. The last 5 week record, that's just what it ended up as. It's not against the league. So VTL is shown right next to it. So you can kind of see, well, is that lucky? Is that not lucky? So Nate takes over #1 spot in the power rankings, followed by Frank, followed by me. Calling this tier, someone's missing out on a bye. Because to me, it seems pretty clear those 3 teams are up at the top, and one of them's going to get the bye. In 4th, we have Alex, who has gone 47, 31, and 2 over the last 5 weeks. 54% VTL is right up there near the top. I think it's good for 4th. I have him in the tier by himself. Looks like a playoff team. The next tier, tier C, someone's missing the playoffs and getting Otani because we have a new entrant. That would be JW. Who's been on a really big hot streak here. Corey, Maffey, and JW make up this tier. You can see their data here. Corey, 51%, almost 52% VTL. Despite going 34, 44, and 2, I do not believe he has won a single one of those matchups. Every week he loses by the slimmest of margins. No, maybe his one big win was mixed in there. Still, he's doing fine. His VTLs are solid. He just finds the wrong opponent every week. It's crazy. Maffey at 30, 45, and 5, but up at almost a 55% VTL, not very far behind me. Still, he's been struggling a little bit lately. These numbers, I think, were fueled by one really big performance several weeks back. And then JW's been on a really good run, 46, 27, and 7 over the last 5 weeks. That's just behind Alex and Nate for the most wins in that stretch. The VTL is 52.3 over the last 5 weeks. Good. I mean, not exceptional, but good. So he may have had a tiny bit of luck help him there, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you were 5th in the standings. Your VTL is kind of coming around. You're right there. Now he does play Alex and Nate next 2 weeks. So we'll see how he handles those. That's going to be a big test. Then next tier is Bo, French, Casey, and Brad. I'm calling this major changes would be needed to go on a run. And then that's supposed to be tier D, not C. Tier E, repent for your baseball sins as you've obviously offended the baseball gods. That is Jeremiah by himself at the bottom. And I'll get into that with his recap. So the VTL actually looks much better than the 3 people before him. However, you will notice his record is much worse. Not much worse, but worse. 29, 48, and 3 for Jeremiah is the worst mark in the league over the last 5 weeks. I skipped over the records of Bo, French, Casey, and Brad. They're all kind of middling. I guess Bo's actually been a little worse than middling, despite having actually a pretty good VTL. Let's get into the recaps. So I did what I could to write something for everybody, positive and negative. It's not always, specifically positive and negative. I realize you also can just read this. So if you don't want to listen to me, that's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and read these. So for our tier A, someone's missing out on a bye. Nate's positive spin. Nate is 3 weeks away from running the gauntlet, facing all other teams without a loss. Something that has rather insanely happened exactly once in all 7 previous seasons of Funky Town Baseball. It won't be easy with Frank, JW, and Alex up next. So 3 of the teams in Tier C and above. That'll be an interesting thing. If he can cap it off with that, um, he deserves it. Nate's negative spin, you could argue that at just 51.14% VTL over the last 5 weeks, Nate hasn't really looked like a number 1 team. His only loss came back in week 3, though, so I would still take the field over Nate, but he sure seems like the favorite. That loss in week 3 came against Alex, who is up here in 3 weeks against Nate. Frank's positive spin. Following a 4-week stretch of mid-40s VTLs, Frank all of a sudden has the top VTL over the last 5 weeks, 60.34%. He has a chance to take the number 1 spot in the power rankings back for the first time since week 4 with a win against Nate this week. The negative spin. Not a lot of negative spin to add here, other than I'm not sure where the bad VTL stretch came from weeks 5 to 8, and it could happen again. With 3 straight weeks over 62% VTL, though, it looks like the days of middling VTLs are gone. My positive spin, back-to-back losses as Frank and Nate averaged 71.7% VTL is tough, but ultimately, you just have to tip your cap and move on some weeks. Justin is still the number 1 season-long VTL, number 1 pitching, number 3 batting, and number 2 over the last 5 weeks. My negative spin, Justin has been below 54% VTL just twice all season, which is remarkable. However, he's exceeded 61% VTL just twice also. What are the odds you can win the title without exceeding 61% VTL in the playoffs? Pretty low, I would say. So, a little concerned about my ceiling. Moving to Tier B, looks like a playoff team. Alex's positive spin. None but the big 3 have solidified themselves as a playoff team, but I feel more confident that Alex is dangerous than the next teams in the next tier, so I'm betting on him. He has as many 60% plus VTL weeks, 4, as the rest of Tier C combined. The negative would be, through 11 weeks, Alex has been rather boom or bust. The top 5 VTLs are 4th highest, but his bottom 5 VTLs are 4th lowest. And when I say that, I mean if you take the 5 highest and you average them, and then you take the 5 lowest and you average them. Those are the numbers that I'm comparing. So he's got the 4th highest best 5, but the 4th lowest worst 5. So we're seeing kind of the boom or bust. It's hard to win a title without a solid floor when 1 week can knock you out, but it could happen. I think I could see it, even though a lot would need to break right. Tier C, someone's missing the playoffs and getting Ohtani. Corey, the bad luck continues, 57.1 total opponent VTL. That's essentially playing the best team in the league because number 1 is 58% every single week. He has a high floor. His 5 worst VTL performances average out to 43.4. That's good for 4th best in the league. Would I bet any money that a team that is 2-8-1 will win the title? No. But is this the best 2-8-1 team ever? Easily. The potential to do damage is there. VTL is nice to have, but you have to actually win categories to make the playoffs. The negative. For Maffey, the positive, the pitching has been both a high ceiling and floor team. It's the 3rd best of the highest 5 at 68%, and 3rd best at the low 5, 46.6%. If he can get the offense to produce at just a 50% level, he can beat anyone. That will probably require some trades, though, I believe. The negative spin, having exceeded 56% VTL just once in the last 10 weeks, the ceiling doesn't look like that of a title contender, but the pitching has been good enough to keep him squarely in the playoff chase. You never know what can happen once you make the playoffs. JW's positive spin, the VTL or the season-long VTLs will never forget how poorly the season started, but JW has lost fewer categories than any other team over the last 5 weeks. That's 4 wins in a row and over 50% average VTL over that stretch. So I had it wrong before. I had it as a 3-game win streak. It's 4. Thought so. The negative, encouraging as the win streak is, especially when you think about the actual fan track standings where he's 5th place, the VTL suggests JW isn't on the cusp of title contention just yet. We need to see more, but we're trending up. Tier D, major changes would be needed to go on a run. Bo has been the only seller of the 2025 season so far, but his VTL over the last 5 weeks is 49.7%. I mean, if he can find a way to keep in range of that 7th or 8th spot, he may be able to add a premium player to his burgeoning squad of young talent. That would be slam dunk for Bo. I mean, get Ohtani and you can sell. That'd be wonderful. The negative question for me becomes, how much more is there to sell? This will be the big question for Bo, and I think he's going to be the pioneer for the rest of the league. You still want to have $100 of great talent, and tantalizing as prospects are, $100 worth of those and a few high picks feels like a risky bet. That was essentially the Maffey model from 2 years ago. French is next, back to the usual 40 to 51% VTL range, 40.6%. He's only had 1 week outside of that, and so while French isn't likely going to be an easy win, it's not likely that he's going to beat you badly either. I'm really interested to see what French does at the deadline. He is not someone who gives up easily, and my gut inclination, I think he would also probably just go ahead and say he's not selling. But the pessimistic update would be, I think this is a good year to sell. If we had seen any glimmer of a ceiling to suggest that multiple upsets were possible, it may be different. But in a season with limited sellers so far, opportunity is going to be there, and I just don't see it for French right now. The ceiling has just been non-existent. 51% is his second best week of the season. That's just not a team that's a player away, you know? I think about it, French. I don't know. You could sell me Aaron Judge too if that's how you go. For Casey, the descent continues, and I admit it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel now. That said, we've already seen this team win 4 games in a row once. You know, at this point, Casey's pretty much committed to buying either way. So it's playoffs or bust still, and it's entirely possible. There isn't much separation between some of those bottom teams, so no reason to feel like it's over. Lots of season left. The negative spin, the total VTL has dropped nearly 8 weeks in a row, falling from 55.6% after week 3 to 46.1% after week 11. Considering the amount of data at our disposal by mid-season, it feels like it might take a full liquidation of his draft picks in order for him to compete at a high level. And so, brutal as the question may be, I think you got to start asking, like, are you going all in on something that has a decent chance of success, or does it not have a decent chance of success? And then you got to really think hard about what that looks like for next year, especially because a lot of the classic favorites are going for it this year. Maybe it's better to punt, hard as that would be, after such a promising start and having given away some of your picks already. I don't know. It's at least worth thinking about. Several weeks till the deadline, though. Really not a rush, I suppose. Plus, you want to finish high, so you honestly don't want to sell too early, even if you did sell. Anyways, Brad is next. Brad is just 4.5 games out of a playoff spot, so it's still within reach to get up to the Ohtani slot or even challenge for the 6th playoff spot if things break right. The group is still so close that giving anyone the bottom rank feels wrong, but it's got to go to someone. The pessimistic side for Brad would be that the VTL has been pretty bad lately. Despite nearly a 500 record over the last 5 weeks, we've seen just a 42.0% VTL over that span. Doesn't seem to be any evidence that a turnaround is coming soon. Tier E, repent for your baseball sins as you've obviously offended the baseball gods. Positive, Jeremiah's pitching has rebounded, staying over 50% average VTL over the last 4 weeks. And that's what I was clamoring for the whole time. I just said, if Jeremiah's pitching can just be average, this guy could win it all. That's what I said. I think like 3 weeks ago, he was in like 6th or 7th of my power rankings. However, the baseball gods are not just, they're just not going to let it happen. His untouchable offense has now cratered to just 34.5% VTL over that same stretch where his pitching has gone up. So he's made no ground, still in last in the standings. The VTL is now officially last as well. It's just the baseball gods are just not letting this happen. So if Jeremiah were 3 games back of a playoff spot, I would still think that the potential is there now that we're seeing that pitching kick up. However, already 14 games back of 6th place, and with every team in between wanting to win, it seems incredibly unlikely that Jeremiah is going to make the playoffs at this point. But there is still 9 weeks left. So it is definitely still possible. But that's kind of how I see it. Well, that's everything. Probably a pretty long video. I'm gonna actually hopefully post another video this week, kind of a mid-season recap. I didn't get around to that first third of the season video, but I'd like to do something where we maybe take a look at each team kind of just one at a time, metrics that are just that one team up on the screen, maybe talk through some things that I've seen, and then everyone kind of gets a little bit of a spotlight. I think that would be fun. I'm just trying to find the time to do it. So keep your eyes out. But yeah, till then, see you next time.